Hello and welcome, my name is Clayton Bridges, and today we're going to be doing a transmission service on my 1994 LS400. Realistically, there's a couple types of transmission services that you might do to this vehicle. The first thing would be a drain and fill, which would simply be removing the drain plug and then filling it through the dipstick up top. Very easy, probably even easier than an oil change because you don't even have to do a filter. The second method is going to be actually replacing the transmission filter. You don't need to do it as commonly, or at least not every service, and not as commonly as an engine oil filter. It is a good idea to change out after a while. Now, recently I was employed at a Lexus dealership, and when I talked to some of the parts guys about a transmission service, apparently at that dealership, we do not do filters, or at least we rarely recommend them. I don't know exactly how I feel about this. I'm gonna go ahead and do my filter anyway, but in theory, they're claiming it's non-serviceable, which just isn't true. A lot of transmissions use very similar style ways to filter the transmission. Using a magnet to collect any kind of metal particulates in the oil is one method, and then you also have like a screening element type of filter, just like an oil filter. So generally speaking, doing the filter itself can be a little more intimidating because you do have to remove the transmission oil pan and then reseal it, which can cause some complications if you don't seal it properly, and it's a little nerve-wracking. You're unbolting it right off the valve body on the transmission. It is a little more intrusive, or invasive should I say, than just a typical oil change. Don't forget to stick to the end of the video. There will be a Superclean degreaser giveaway. I'm going to start off by talking about some of the things that you need to be able to do this. If you are going to do the filter, you are going to obviously need a filter. Metal bedpan looking thing. The other thing that you'll need is Toyota Form in Place Gasket, FIPG. It is simply a sealant. This is going to make the entire seal on the oil pan, so you don't need a gasket. They do sell gaskets, but I believe this is how it comes from the factory, and, well, just the proper way to do it. I guess we'll see if there's any kind of gasket on there when I take it off, but usually it's just this. ATF. Now, first of all, let's talk about the quality of ATF, okay? In my opinion, generally speaking, a lot of oils are manufactured to pretty much the best quality that they can. Your brand loyalty might be a little silly. You can try and go with OEM fluid. I'm sure the OEM fluid is just a little bit better. However, currently, my car has had non-Toyota ATF running in it, just some generic stuff from the shop that I used to work at. Many shops I work in just use a generic ATF that we use in every single car. It's alright. Alright? This is what was sold to me by my Lexus dealer. Alright? And believe me, if they want to make extra money on like factory fluid, they probably will. Generally, a drain and fill will be about 2 quarts. I have 5 quarts for the full thing. I don't really expect to use all of that, but I don't want to not have it. Plus, if I have extra, what I will do is I will probably do a drain and fill every oil change. From now on. Just because it's getting really old, and we'll see if we can get more life out of the transmission, I suppose. Or more performance. Now that we have these two things, we have our ATF, we have our form in place gasket, and we have our filter. That should be it as far as parts go for the transmission flush. Next, you'll just need a few simple tools. As far as tools go, it's a pretty basic set. A nice 3/8 ratchet. In my opinion, the longer the better. This is about 18 inches. You can get this exact wrench from a Harbor Freight. It's pretty good. A little bit of leverage, doesn't really hurt. Maybe a 3/8 extension. Then what you're going to want is the almighty 10mm, 12mm, and 14mm. Okay? I'm not entirely sure which bolt is which just yet, but so many parts on the Toyota are held by a 10, 12, or 14mm. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that's going to get the job done. Next, you're going to want some kind of scraper. This one has a plastic blade that's good for not scratching things up. It's a little harder to use. We have another scraper like so. You can use a metal razor blade. I believe the pan is steel. We'll have to double check, but you might have pretty good luck with not scratching it. The best option, in my opinion, is going to be a die grinder with this type of attachment. I refer to these as roll-lock discs. They're basically just a sanding disc. It's made from this rather strange material. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It's like very porous. It's just kind of like, imagine if you had a really crusty sponge. That's what this is. Alright, so obviously that's gonna require an air compressor. You can get electric grinders, maybe even a drill would work. But generally speaking, anything that you're going to be able to remove this old gasket material off without damaging the surfaces. Okay, so that's a really important part. Finally, some high quality jack stands and a floor jack. Jack stands are absolutely necessary when you lift up a vehicle and you're working on it at all. Do not go under it without jack stands. Only supported by the jack. And finally, you're going to want a drain pan for the transmission filter, and pulling off that pan, you're really going to want something wide. I would highly suggest like a baking tray or something like this. This is about as good as we're going to get. The wider the better, because it will be a little bit of a mess when we take the pan off, and sometimes it's hard to tell where the fluid's going to go. The next thing I like to do while it's running and warming up is we're gonna check the transmission fluid level. So what I like to do is get in the car, run it through all the gears, and then when I come back, I'm gonna pull the dipstick and I'm gonna be looking for the condition and the level of the fluid. Notice we're at operating temperature. So our transmission dipstick is located right here. Okay, twist it to unlock it. Pull up. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe this fluid off. Stick her on down. Okay. Carefully pull it out. Alright, so here we have our hot mark and then our cool. So when the transmission's at operating temperature, we want to be on this final line here, alright? Which it looks like we are. So it's better to do this with a white rag. But if we take a look at the fluid itself, it is brown, it is a little dark, it's not black. So I also like to give her a smell. Smells pretty good, doesn't smell burnt, so go ahead and wipe that. So based on that, I would say the transmission's in decent health. Fluid's not too terribly burnt up or destroyed or whatever, but we'll see what happens when we drain it. Alright, so I'm about halfway down the car right now. As you can see, there's the side view. Right under here is where our transmission pan's going to be. It's not that tight of a fit. I don't like that. That doesn't feel very good at all. Alright. Give you a general idea of where I am. This is the front left tire. And if we go all the way in here, here's the cat, tucked back up there, all the way up there, is that bolt for the bracket. So the best way to find it is probably by looking down from the top, looking at the trans dipstick, all the way down. You'll have to get under the car and go all the way down. Just follow the dipstick tube, and there will be one, I believe, 14 mil bolt holding it to the engine block. Accessing it from about right here is probably going to be your best bet. And with just a little bit of swivels, we were able to get it out. About a 6-inch extension. I did use a wobbly, so that makes it a little easier. But just snake your way in there and you'll get it out. Alright, next step, I'm going to be removing these 10mm bolts from along the pan, and then we'll pry the pan off. Working on the last bolt here. It looks like it's pretty much ready to come off. So let's see if that's the case. Oh, fuck. So, yeah, there's that extra fluid. Pretty little valve body. So there is the pan. This little piece of the dipstick tube actually looks like it separates from another piece. This little piece is a magnet. It's used to collect shavings. Just be sure those don't get knocked off or lost. You definitely want those. Now to remove the filter, there are just 3 10mm bolts that will undo and it'll drop right off. Quite a bit still coming out the strainer. Alrighty, pop quiz. What is the difference between the filter on the right and the filter on the left? Something's missing. Pretty glad that happened. That little piece of cork is clearly still stuck to the transmission. So make sure we get those off. So now that these are off the car, this should give you a pretty good idea of how the bolts are set up. There's probably like, I don't know, 15 or so, 16 maybe, bolts all around the pan. And then clearly, when this is off, you have to remove this gasket, which we'll go over. And then for the filter, we simply have just, oh, that's not it, just 3 little holes that the bolt goes through to hold it on. Plastic is working fine. Our next step is going to be removing this gasket here. Shouldn't be too difficult. It's just a paper gasket and should just come right off. I gotta be honest, I can't believe this wasn't leaking. We got some brake cleaner, and I'm just gonna spray a little bit in here to loosen some of this stuff up. Not really the greatest rags to use for this, but okay, the surfaces are pretty much cleaned up. I'm not going super crazy with it. It should be good. But yeah, I'd say we're ready. So I'm just going to do a final wipe down of both the surfaces, and then we'll get ready to apply the sealant. We're ready to reinstall the strainer. It's just 3 bolts. I am going to torque it, and I'm going to torque it to 7 foot-pounds. Okay? That's like 84 inch-pounds. I am going to use an inch-pound torque wrench. If you do not torque this, just keep in mind how little pressure 7 foot-pounds is. Just lightly snug this guy up. What I usually do before I put down sealant is I will take brake cleaner, go around and just make sure this whole seating area is really clean. Okay. Might take a couple passes. I'm going to get the inside too a little bit here. The really important thing is you need to use something that's not going to leave a residue. Pass with a dry cloth. Then to top it all off, I'm going to use some compressed air. I'm going to go ahead and put my bolts underneath the car to get them ready. I already have my tools to tighten it, so that gives us plenty of room to go ahead and apply this stuff. I'm going to put it on pretty thick, and I'm going to prioritize the inside of these bolts. And I'm just going to do a fat bead all along that area. We put that cap on right away. So you can also kind of spread it around with your fingers a little bit. I don't really think it matters at all, but I also like to do that. I probably put too fat of a bead on here, to be honest. This allows me to wipe off a lot of the excess that's going to get torqued down. Yeah, so the main issue with doing too much is you get some on the inside, and that's not really a good thing. Probably not going to be able to film this, but I am going to put it in place and start some of the bolts. Well, I am exhausted. The transmission pan is on, filter's in there, everything's all good, everything underneath is tucked away. I'll talk about a few things here. So when you're ready to fill the transmission, we're going to fill it right there through the dipstick. So it's good to get a funnel, preferably bigger than this one. I think we'll be okay though. So to start, I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 quarts in it. And then I'll start the engine and we'll see where my engine oil is. Then once the engine oil's set, we'll get the transmission hot again and see where our level is. So when you're putting in new fluids, not a bad idea to just take a look at it and, you know, get a good idea of what clean fluid looks like. Clean ATF is cherry red. Keep in mind the kind of stuff that we pulled out. ATF is a very interesting fluid. Transmission fluid is very high in dispersants and detergents, which both kind of do the same thing, but they help clean the inside of the gearbox, well, the transmission or the engine. So oil has some too, but ATF is very, very high in it. Because of that, some people use it to like clean air tools. You can use ATF to clean kind of a lot of things. It's a little bizarre. The reason why an old farmer's trick is to run like a quart of ATF through the engine, because, well, that's why. The detergents and dispersants help break things up. I've actually done that in my Miata, and I'm not gonna lie, I think it really helped. I'm probably gonna do maybe a quarter, maybe a half of this one. It looks like there was almost 3 quarts that came out here. There's quite a lot in that drain bucket. And keep in mind, you're gonna get more from removing the pan, removing the strainer, and all that. Now that that is topped off, I'm going to take that out. And we go ahead and put this dipstick back in, just to keep it clean. Seeing some wet down there. Alrighty, took me several hours with also trying to create a video. It's a relatively simple thing to do. Unbolting the dipstick tube off the engine is a pain in the ass. Dropping the transmission pan is always a mess. It's really not that fun to do. It's definitely worth doing though. Transmission fluid is really important. I feel like it's a little overlooked often. You don't have to do it every fluid change like you might with some other vehicles, but... Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start the car, let it run, and heat up to operating temperature. We'll look out for any leaks. Shouldn't leak, but then we'll check the fluid and see where we're at once we are hot. Make sure we're on that dipstick, and then we're good for a test drive. I'm gonna go switch my clothes, lock up the house, go on a test drive, and then we should be good for the night. Pick it back up tomorrow. Alright, we are back. I now have a drain plug replacement. When I installed the drain plug, I am an idiot. I forgot the gasket that goes in between the bolt and the pan, so it's been leaking. Yeah, it's been leaking. That bolt was also in really bad condition. So we have the old gasket here and the new one, and it is a crush gasket. You really should only be using it once. I mean, you can get away with reusing them sometimes. Generally not a great idea, but that definitely needs to be replaced. And the plug too, so whatever. Plus we gotta go back underneath for the oil filter. Got a lot to do real quick. Shouldn't take long, but that'll finish it up. But other than that, it's been great. Here we have the gaskets. So you can see how that is quite bulbous and thick. And then this one is not. It's all crushed down and flat. So this is the before and after, really. It gets crushed and compresses. Spreads out like that to make a nice fit. That being said, when you're tightening it down, if you do it hand tight, which ideally you don't, but if you do it hand tight, just be aware of that. You're going to be crushing that gasket, and you're going to feel that. You know, it's always best practice to torque drain plugs. I mean, I have stretched threads on my drain plug, and, you know, I'm going to guess it was because someone needed to crank that down really hard. It's just better not to pull threads on your own stuff. 15 foot-pounds is what the internet tells me for torque specs. This little puddle has formed since it's been in the garage, and it has not been in for very long. The exhaust is wet with transmission oil, so I'm pretty sure it's entirely because there is no drain plug gasket at all. Probably lost more fluid than I thought, but I don't think it, like, went to dangerous levels, so I'm just gonna try and quickly swap it out. I only have 2 quarts, so I can't drain any more than that. Oh, crusty, crusty, crusty. Oh, I really hope the oil pan isn't. It feels fucked. I guess the big question is gonna be, are the threads on the pan fucked? I'm gonna let it drain out most of it, to be honest. It smells good. Just so we can cycle some new fluid through it. Good enough. Oh yeah, that feels much better. It's not perfect, but oh yeah, much better. Click, 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 click. Okay, thank God. It doesn't seem like the threads on my pan are bad, and it's not the oil pan that's leaking even. So I'm just gonna degrease the bottom of this and refill it, and then drive. You know the last step, setting the oil level. Let's go ahead and pull that dipstick off, wipe it off, stick it back in, pull it back out, see what's up. If you need it, the part number for the transmission drain plug and the gasket will be in the description below, as well as links to many things you will need to do a lot of this. Again, it's really not too bad. Pulling the transmission pan off is a little invasive, especially if you're doing the filter. It can be a little intimidating if you're inexperienced, but the oil change, both the transmission and the engine oil, if you're just doing a drain and fill, very easy. Transmission drain and fill is probably even easier because you don't have to mess with a filter if you're just doing the drain and fill. Just pull 2 quarts out, put it back in, make sure it's good. Just make sure you're always working safely and efficiently. So, hopefully you learned something with this. We went over an oil change, transmission, filter, and fluid change. So, those are 2 really big, important maintenance items. Oil changes, obviously. Transmission flushes generally are done every 30,000 miles. I know a lot of LS400s are upwards of 200,000 miles. Doesn't hurt to do it more frequently. I'm actually really impressed with the fluid that I pulled out today. I was planning on just doing a transmission drain and fill every oil change. If you're doing a drain and fill, it's pretty easy and it's actually really cheap. Maybe not so much anymore, but you used to be able to do one for like less than $10. It just costs you 2 quarts of ATF, which is generally pretty inexpensive. If you really want OE quality, go with Lexus Fluid. Superclean has been kind enough to send me these 2 products. Superclean degreaser in aerosol and in the traditional bottle. If you need some degreaser, you can find Superclean at any of these stores. You can also find them in the Amazon affiliate link below and purchase them through Amazon. Superclean will send 1 lucky winner these products. Comment auto below, and I will randomly select a winner after 3 weeks of the upload date of this video, and Superclean will send you out these products. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you later. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much.